In lesson 1.3, we're going to talk about subtracting integers. And there's two schools of thought here. You could just subtract, or you can add and add its opposite. So let's start with, let's do 3 minus 4. You could just do 3 minus 4 and know that that gets -1. That is simple for some people, not for others, and that's okay. Okay, so I'm going to do 3 minus 4. So minus we know is left, less left. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and I get -1. Okay, or the textbook suggests that when subtracting, you always actually add the opposite. So instead of putting 3 minus 4, we're going to do 3 plus. So we're going to change the minus sign to a plus sign, and we're going to do the opposite of this positive 4 and say it's a -4. So we're going to do 3 plus -4. Okay, and we learned in the last video that when we're adding opposite signs, we find the greater of the absolute values minus the other one. So 4 minus 3 is 1, because this has the greater absolute value. Okay, so we're going to do 4 minus 3 and get 1. And then we're going to look at the negative and the positive sign. We're going to look at this sign and this sign and go with the greater absolute value. Again, -4 is the greater absolute value, so we're going to keep the negative sign. Okay, just like we did in the last video. So again, I start at 3, and I go left 4, because I'm adding, but I'm adding a -4. So -4 means less, which means left, and I get a -1. So I can either just do 3 minus 4 and get -1, or I could do 3 plus -4 and get -1. So 3 minus 4 and 3 plus -4 are the same equation or same expression. So let's try another one. Let's do 3 minus 6. So I could start at 3 and subtract 6. So I could go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 3 minus 6 is -3. Or I could rewrite it as an addition problem. So I'm going to write 3. I'm going to take this negative sign and switch it to a positive sign. Okay, and then I'm going to take my positive 6 and do the opposite number, or its additive inverse, and do 3 plus -6. Okay, and this is the bigger of the absolute values. So I'm going to keep my 6 and subtract by 3, so 6 minus 3, and I'm going to get 3. But this is the larger absolute value, so I'm going to keep this sign, and I'm going to put a negative sign in front of it. Again, no matter if you just start subtracting right away or if you switch it to an addition problem, you're going to get the same answer. Let's try -1 minus 3. Okay, so I could go back and say, hey, look, these are the same signs. And when they're the same signs, because remember, if I switch this to an addition problem, I can say -1 plus -3. Oh, they're the same sides. I add them together. I get -4. Okay. Or I could just say -1. Let's rewrite that. Sorry, I could write -1 minus 3 and just start at -1 and go -3 minus is left and get -4. Okay, so you could do -1 minus 3 is -4, or I can flip that to an addition problem. So I'm going to take this negative sign, I'm going to make it a positive, and I'm going to take this positive sign that's right here and make it a negative. Another way that some people like to see it when we do this is really what you're doing is you're making that a plus sign and this a negative. You're adding the opposite. But some people like to say that you just need to insert a little plus sign right there. Okay, that's the same thing, however you want to think about it. Okay, let's do one more. Let's do 1 minus -3. 1 minus negative 3. So if I'm going to do what the textbook says and end up adding the opposite, I'm going to keep my 1. I'm going to change this to a plus sign, and then I'm going to find the additive inverse of negative 3, which is 3. So really what I'm doing is 1 plus 3 equals 4. Okay, another way of looking at that is if I have two negative signs together, I'm just going to take this one and flip it up on its side so I get a plus sign. So 1 minus negative 3. It's really 1 plus 3. So 2 minus signs equals a positive sign. Okay, so you can either think of it this way. Okay, again, 1, and I'm going to switch my minus sign to a plus sign. I'm going to switch my negative 3 to its additive inverse, which is 3. Okay, or I can just say, hey, there's two negative signs next to each other. That really means plus. However you would like to think about that.